Could you imagine a world where there was no more new movies and all you had was the library and archive of the existing movies that you've seen before? Well, that could potentially be true if these strikes does not end with SAG-AFTRA, which is pretty much the organization body to represent a lot of actors throughout the movie industry to make sure that they're fairly compensated, they receive their residuals and incomes as they are supposed to. I'm more familiar with how things work on the music industry, but I did want to take a deep dive in terms of the movie industry because it does impact some of the music industry as well as music get licensed. A lot of composers work on some things. It's stopping a lot of things right now. I have one pending track which is potentially supposed to be used on this TV show, and unfortunately, because this episode has not been scheduled to be aired, I could never receive a dime from this at all. According to Vanity Fair, on November 1st, there's some optimism that pretty much happened. September, negotiations seemed like they were becoming more and closer to between SAG-AFTRA as well as a lot of the big executives in the movie industry. However, AI seems to be a potential threat because they can use AI to leverage a lot of existing and past performances to recreate those in a way that simulates like it's the real thing. But we already know that sometimes there are pluses and minuses to that, right? It can save costs in certain factors, but if it's overly abused, then it becomes very detrimental in terms of the financials to a lot of these actors, as well as the union as well. One of the things is that the current AMPTP proposal, according to THR, would allow the studios to reuse scans of dead actors without the permission of their estates or of SAG-AFTRA. That is a little bit cruel. In the music industry, there's something called public domain. Pretty much, if you copyright your track today, 70 years from now, people can use that track as well as use the compositions freely without paying you any royalties. I'm not aware of anything like that similar to this in the movie industry, but according to this, if an actor that was really successful, well aware of, died maybe 5 years ago, and they can do that within this proposal, they would have the rights to be able to do that. That it has its pluses and minuses. The plus to this is that they can save a lot of costs and be able to get movies to you faster. The negative side to it is that the estates of a lot of these dead actors, which rely upon this income to keep coming in to pay for the things that they had already established, now they're limited. I mean, they're not going to receive as much funding. Therefore, it's going to be retained more towards the movie companies because they're the ones that's doing the investment within the AI industry to make sure that their technology is a lot much better in order for them to be able to generate these movies to you as quickly as possible. One union side source told to THR suggested this might be enough to convince higher paid actors to stay in the fight. Right? That makes sense. They have to realize that this is about protecting them. This is their strike now when they realize what's on the line. Lower actors don't make that much money. I was seeing the average salary of actors that are in the field. It's something around like $20,000. Like, who can survive on that? It's insane. Of course, the high paid actors, they get paid in the millions. They can afford to not act for a bit of time, but these lower actors, they really have been dependent upon these roles that they get in order for them to live and live day to day. It's a very hard thing to deal with, and that's why I always encourage, no matter how much money you make, you got to try to adjust your lifestyle, and whatever you bring in, invest it, because that's the only way you're going to be able to upkeep with inflation, as well as set up some financial stability for yourself. Because if you convert the cash that you earn to assets, stocks, crypto, real estate, as these things blossom and grow, you're able to capitalize and actually grow your wealth at the same time as well. This person, Jeffrey Brown, Twitter, said, who in their right mind would sign any contract that allowed this? Pretty much the same thing I was saying about the whole language for them to be able to use dead performers without the consent of their estates or SAG-AFTRA. Right? Technology is growing. I am all for AI, but it needs to be at a balance, because it cannot be to the point where they suck up so much of the financial jobs out there. People don't have nothing to be able to create for themselves. It kind of sucks. And it does, when someone is acting in a role, it feels real. It creates a connection with you. There is limitations that AI can do because it really relies upon our historical performances in order for it to do what it does. ChatGPT, it looks at past historical data for it to get smarter. but it's still a better assistant at the end of the day. Right now, it's not completely self-operating, right? It needs us to queue it up in order for it to determine what to ask for next and how should it evolve based upon our questions that we're asking it and our evolvement as well. It's a great assistant, but for it to be operating on its own, meaning literally allowing AI to be dominantly the tool that you use and 80%, 90% of the time, and 10% goes to the actual people, then it could create a potential problem. Then there's a bit of natural, organic, emotional connection that it could potentially be lacking. Not saying that I can't replicate a lot of that, but it has its limitations, and only us humans can really be able to tell that. Let's look at some numbers actually from the CEOs. Netflix is one I'm going to look at because I own a lot of Netflix stocks, especially in one of my retirement accounts. I bought a lot of Netflix when it dropped to like around 180, 190 last year, and now it's at like $430 per share. I do support what they're doing because they do provide a lot of indie films the opportunity to be exposed on a bigger platform. However, are they in the fight for the people, the actors, or are they more in the fight for AI? That not too sure on, but they are definitely around those roundtables having those discussions with the union reps because they also on that side of the fence. They're going to try to cut costs and try to make their shareholders happy because at the end of the day, that's what these companies are trying to do. They want to make their shareholders happy, which creates more money, brings more money to their stock prices, more money for the company itself, and grow things that way. But if it becomes at an excessive level, then you have nobody that really, your people that helps work on these things to make all this possible, they're not properly compensated. Then the foundation of your company no longer is viable right at that point, right? You're at a risk. It's the same thing I see with Spotify, where the musicians are paid a whole lot less versus the tech side of it pays a whole lot more when Spotify couldn't have been built without music. But it's a business idea. So Reed Hastings' total pay last year in 2022 was $51 million, 49.9 of which was in stocks, option awards, up 25% from 2021. It's a huge increase. Sarandos Plays, which is another CEO, pay jumped by 31.5% in 2022 to $50.3 million, compromising $20 million base pay and $28 million in stock options. This is crazy. I like getting paid in stock options. The plus side to it is that when you have that public equity, you could take that to a company, to a bank, and be like, listen, I have all these shares. I don't want to sell them. Can I use this as a loan? So that way, in case anything happens, yes, I can liquidate that and pay you back. You can work those leverages with banks. That's the plus side to having stock options. And he didn't pay taxes, and he don't pay taxes on that $28 million. He only paid taxes on the $20 million, which is pretty much where his base pay come from. But as we can see, these CEOs are getting paid quite a bit, right? Compare that $20 million to the average person that's earning $20,000, $30,000 as an actor in the movie industry, right? Only the higher paid actors actually see those millions, but a majority of them stay in that low bottom range. But these CEOs, I'm not saying they didn't put no work, but we see how they're compensated. Like, could he really use the other 50 millions? But I don't know. There may be other things he's doing. I know me, if I reach that height, I'm going to be doing a lot of philanthropy work, building opportunities for different societies, schools, especially back home in Haiti, and try to see how I can uplift the economy over there as much as I can. Not to be the one that's fueling everything, but how do I make it self-sustained? But building that infrastructure in order for it to be allowed to get there. So those are some of the ideas that I have. It's like once I reach that capacity where it's like, yeah, I'm making $50 million per year in that sense. But let's also look at Netflix earnings. So one of the things you got to think about when it comes to company earnings, there's something called an EPS, earnings per share. That's usually an indicator that's used whether to make it seem like if people are willing to pay more for a stock, which potentially investors look at this as the stock might go crazy. And right now I'm showing you a data which has, of course, the bigger of the biggest. As we can see, Meta was the one that reached like more of the higher EPS. And then second to that was Netflix, right? Over the $10 mark. So it has a lot of good opportunities when it comes to that. But let's look at the financials of Netflix and how they calculate this. And I'm just going to quickly go over this. Yahoo Finance typically does this calculation for you, but if you wanted to know how to figure out what the EPS is, it's pretty much how much money they earn for that quarter, right? And then how many over divided by the number of shares they have outstanding. So right here, if you go in the statistics section inside of any stock inside of Yahoo Finance, and you go to the shares outstanding, right? They have 437.68 million shares outstanding. And if you go to financials now, and you go to performance, and if you narrow it down to quarter, and I'll hit view all, it should take a couple of seconds to load up. Switch back over to quarter, right? So 9/30 is the last quarter that we just pretty much went through. The net income was $1.677 billion. So all this is in billions. This is not in millions. As you can see, all numbers in thousands. So you would multiply this 1.677 something million times 1,000, which equates to 1.6 something billion, divided by that 437, and that's how they get this EPS that's calculated here, which is at 352. The estimate is what the analysts usually piece together, saying that's how much we think you're going to earn based upon your historical trend. Different analysts have different ways of measuring that. It's all calculated based on a number of factors, right? Whether this is a good EPS for them or not is based on their competitors. But so far, I'm seeing they have a very strong balance sheet. They're keeping billions of dollars in cash reserve. I think they have over $6 billion in store right now in terms of cash reserves, and plus the operating expenses. They're profiting every quarter. Like if you look at this right here, right? This is their revenue, and this is how much earnings that they brought in 2022. But look at the last quarter, right? Revenue was at 8.54 billion, and their net earnings was at 1.67 number that we've already went over. So they have really pretty good financials. That's why I believe in it, and I purchased the stock last year because I feel like the movie industry is not going anywhere. But we got to ensure that we do everything in our power to make sure that they're supported as well, because I can't imagine a world where AI is just going to be creating all the movies that we see, because there's a lack of emotional evolve that happens with humans over time that I don't think AI is going to be able to reproduce, because it does not know. It's dependent upon our historical patterns, behaviors, in order for it to be able to tell us what it thinks might potentially be good for us. So hope you found all this insightful. Support the actors as much as possible, but let me know your thoughts. What do you think about this whole thing? Like, should AI have more leverage and more power? Should you think the actors, you're more supportive of the organic actors and no AI involvement at all? Or are you in between? So definitely let me know how you feel. Peace and love. Hope you again found all of this insightful. Like, share, subscribe if you did. If you have any questions for me, always drop it in the comments below. Peace and love. Trust in Jesus. Have an amazing one.